Mean Girl Murders Season 3 Episode 9 tells a brutal and heartbreaking story about friendship, manipulation, and how online fantasy can turn deadly when mixed with real life pressure. The episode follows Cynthia, Cece, Hoffman, a shy young woman from Anchorage who just wanted to fit in and have friends, and Denali, Brehmer, a charismatic, rebellious teen who quickly became Cece's close friend. What starts as a typical teen friendship in a small city turns into a calculated plot motivated by money, attention, and outside influence. And the episode walks through the timeline, the clues, the police work, and the courtroom outcomes in a way that makes the tragedy feel painfully personal rather than just another headline. The show uses interviews, recorded evidence, social media posts, and the voices of friends and family to paint a picture of how Cece went missing, how the search unfolded, and how investigators eventually pieced together a deliberate murder scheme. The episode opens by establishing the setting and the people. Anchorage is presented as an isolated place where kids grow up tough and self-reliant, and where the desire to leave and find something bigger can make young people vulnerable to risky choices. Cece is introduced as a good, hard-working girl who loved hands-on jobs and wanted to build a decent life. She's described as someone who could be shy and who sometimes let others take the lead in social situations. Denali, in contrast, is portrayed as bold, magnetic, and a natural leader. She ran with a group of boys, pushed boundaries, and enjoyed a reputation that drew others toward her. The documentary interviews emphasize how opposite the two seemed on paper, but how Denali's confidence and attention filled a need Cece had for acceptance and excitement. That contrast explains the dynamic that would eventually make Cece a target. The episode spends time showing how the friendship formed and how it changed. Cece met Denali in high school and quickly became part of her circle. Friends remember Cece lighting up and coming out of her shell when she was with Denali, and they also note that Denali could be demanding, possessive, and controlling in small ways. Viewers see a pattern. Denali draws people in with attention and then expects loyalty and favors in return. The show highlights moments where Denali asked Cece to buy things, used her as an emotional crutch, and subtly isolated her from other friends. Those details matter because they build the context for why Cece might trust Denali, why she would accept invitations that other friends might refuse, and why someone could manipulate her without overt intimidation. A key thread the episode follows is Denali's online relationship with a man she called Tyler. The documentary makes it clear that Denali was active on social media and often pursued attention from older men online. She would trade images and do favors for money, and in at least one case she formed a relationship with a man who promised wealth and an escape from Anchorage. The show traces how Denali fell for the fantasy of Tyler T., a distant, glamorous figure who offered money and admiration for increasingly risky behavior. That online fantasy becomes the dark engine of the whole crime, because Tyler eventually proposed a horrifying deal. He wanted real-life violence and would pay if Denali produced photographic proof. The episode uses Denali's own statements and the social media trail to show how quickly online fantasies can be weaponized when mixed with money, ego, and a teenager's willingness to seek approval. The night Cece disappears is told in quiet, terrible detail. She texts her family that she's going to hike with Denali and a friend, Kayden, and she's dropped off at a park where they plan to meet. Family and friends expect a day hike and normal check-ins, ends, but when Cece doesn't answer calls and only sends a short text later, alarm bells ring. Her father, Timothy, knows her as a kid who checks in often, so the silence feels wrong. The episode shows the family's panic, the confusion of police who initially treat a 19-year-old adult missing person as less urgent, and the desperate search through wooded areas popular with teens. The way the documentary presents these moments, calling friends, checking parking lots, combing through trails, makes you feel the slippery hours where every minute is a potential turning point. What shifts the investigation from worry to horror is the discovery at Thunderbird Falls and the witness accounts that follow. The episode shows how friends and local searchers first get leads that Cece was seen with a guy near the falls. Timothy's hope turns to dread when police confirm a tip directing them to the waterfall. Then the worst news arrives. Cece is found in the river, shot execution style. The documentary handles this with restraint, letting interviewees describe the shock and grief. The family's reaction: sobbing, stunned silence, a father punching a wall, underscores how violently the event ruptured a small community. That emotional core is what the episode keeps returning to, reminding viewers that the story is about a life lost and the people left behind, not just a criminal puzzle. Once the body is found, the police shift into investigative mode. Denali is the last known person with Cece that day, so detectives question her intensively. At first she tells a version where a prank went wrong. Kayden suggested duct tape stunt photos. Cece panicked, and things spiraled. But the episode doesn't let that explanation settle. Instead, it shows how uncovered digital evidence, witness statements, and a later incriminating social media video changed everything. A person connected to Denali posts a video that appears to show Denali admitting guilt, which allows investigators to get a search warrant for her phone. That search reveals horrifying images of Cece after her death, photos Denali had taken and sent to the online man she idolized. Those phone images become a central piece of evidence that shifts the case from a tragic accident or an impulsive crime to a calculated murder. The documentary carefully explains how the evidence lines up. Denali's online messages to Tyler show a clear pattern of trading sexual images and then escalating to violent requests. In those conversations, the show presents the claim that Tyler offered a large sum, millions of dollars, for proof of murder. The episode treats this with the proper mix of disbelief and skepticism, but ultimately shows investigators' findings. Denali admitted that Tyler encouraged violent acts for money, and that she and two local boys plotted Cece's murder to fulfill the request. Kayden, the teen who pulled the trigger, and Caleb, who helped with the plan and vehicle, become central suspects. The episode walks through how the trio lured Cece to a secluded spot, used duct tape to bind her as a staged photo setup, and then escalated to murder when she threatened to call police. Denali's role as instigator and photographer, Kayden's role as the shooter, and Caleb's role as an enabler are all laid out with witness statements and police testimony. One of the most disturbing parts of the episode is how casually Denali allegedly treated the aftermath. The show plays clips from social media and interviews where friends remember odd behavior. Denali continuing to post a Snapchat that alarms people, and later a video where she appears to confess or at least make statements that imply involvement. The documentary explains that those posts helped investigators get access to her device and find the grisly photos that sealed the case. The social media evidence also exposed how Denali had sent images of the murder to the man online, essentially treating a crime like content to be traded for money. The episode uses that fact to make a larger point about how online predators can desensitize and monetize violence. The legal aftermath is covered in the final part of the episode. Arrests follow quickly. Kayden is charged with murder, Caleb pleads guilty later, and Denali is eventually arrested and brought to trial. The show explains the prosecutorial reasoning and the outcomes. Denali pleads guilty to murder, Darin Miller. The real identity behind Ler, persona, pleads guilty to soliciting murder, and other participants receive sentences proportionate to their roles. The episode reports on plea deals and sentencing. Denali receives a severe sentence. Darin is convicted of solicitation. Caleb pleads guilty to murder and is sentenced. And Kayden's case continues through the courts. The documentary includes courtroom clips and interviews with family members who struggled through the slow grind of legal proceedings and sentencing. The way the episode presents these legal results focuses on accountability, but also on the community's need for closure and the sense that punishment, while necessary, can't bring Cece back. Throughout the episode, interviews with friends and family add shades of nuance. Cece's friends talk about her as gentle and eager to please, which makes her betrayal by someone she trusted feel worse. Denali's acquaintances describe her as attention-seeking and capable of manipulation, but also a product of a tough upbringing and a hunger for a better life. Some interviewees express anger and call Denali monstrous. Others attempt to understand how a talented, smart teen could be drawn into such a horrifying plot. The episode resists easy explanations. Cece Denali's actions are condemned, but the show also points to systemic issues: online predation, social isolation in remote places, and the lack of resources for young people that can make dangerous choices seem like shortcuts out. That balance helps the episode feel responsible rather than exploitative. A recurring theme the episode raises is the danger of online anonymity and catfishing. Tyler's profile, an attractive, supposedly wealthy man who promised enormous sums, was apparently fake. Investigators later identify him as Darin Miller, a much less impressive figure living with his grandparents. The show traces how Darin used charm and money to lure Denali into a scheme that would prove his sadistic fantasies and give him content to admire. The episode uses this to warn viewers: teenagers seeking validation online can end up in relationships where manipulation and criminal solicitation feel normal. That warning isn't sensationalized. It's grounded in how the evidence actually shows money, flattery, and promises can override basic judgment. Another important point the episode emphasizes is peer pressure and group dynamics. Denali allegedly recruited Kayden and Caleb to help execute the murder, and the docuseries breaks down how groupthink, desire for approval, and impulsive bravado contributed to tragedy. It's not meant to excuse anyone. Adult choices matter, but it does show how young people can be manipulated into committing crimes they might not have considered individually. The documentary's interviews with friends who saw signs of trouble but didn't fully grasp the danger are painful to watch, and they serve as a call to action for communities to look out for vulnerable teens. The human cost of the crime is a constant focus. Cece's family members are given space to grieve and to speak about loss, and their words anchor the episode in sorrow rather than lurid curiosity. The father's rage, the siblings' quiet disbelief, and friends' tears all remind viewers that real people suffered a profound loss. The show brings the viewer back to that grief at key moments. When the body is found, when the photos surface, and when the sentences are handed down. So the narrative remains respectful and centered on the victim, not the perpetrators. That editorial choice gives the episode emotional weight and avoids the trap of turning tragedy into mere entertainment. In the final scenes, the documentary looks at the aftermath, how Cece's family tries to move forward, how the community reels from the revelation that a friend could be a mastermind, and how the legal system attempts to deliver justice. The episode finishes by underscoring lessons: monitor online interactions, teach young people to recognize manipulative behavior, and build stronger support systems for teens who feel isolated. It also leaves viewers with a feeling of unresolved sorrow. No sentence will restore the life lost, and the ripple effects of that single violent day will continue to touch many people. Mean Girl Murders Season 3 Episode 9 is hard to watch because it documents cruelty that feels preventable. The episode is effective because it doesn't sensationalize the violence. Instead, it focuses on relationships, evidence, and the social context that allowed the crime to happen. It's a reminder that teenage cruelty can escalate into terrible things when combined with online predators and a lack of safeguards. For viewers, the takeaway is twofold. The legal system can hold people accountable, but prevention and awareness are crucial to stopping similar tragedies. At the end, the episode calls for concrete steps. It suggests parents and communities stay engaged with teens' online lives, teaches young people how to spot catfishing and coercion, and encourages friends to speak up when someone seems unduly influenced. The documentary raises the idea that isolation, geographic and emotional, made Cece particularly vulnerable, and that community structures need to do better. Viewers are left with a sense of sadness, but also a responsibility to notice, to intervene, and to teach young people that true friendship does not demand danger or silence.